Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. I am Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. This is the live stream I do a couple of different times a week where we talk about hiring, employment, careers, all that kind of stuff. But from the perspective of how this stuff actually goes in the real world, warts and all, including the rudeness, the incompetence, the inefficiency, unprofessionalism, all that kind of stuff. So that's what we talk about here, navigating that world, what you can do. And this is an interactive live stream, so that means that if you're seeing my face, you should see a chat box of some kind. Get in the chat. Let me know what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with, and I will help you out if I can. And we can talk about this stuff and hopefully learn. The topic of today's episode is called Say This and Pass the Interview. So we're going to be talking about what that is, what you can say that carries a huge amount of weight. We're going to be covering that. And beyond that, I really don't have too much of an agenda here. I'm going to be basically going on your comments and your reactions and questions that you guys put in the chat. That's what I'm going to be responding to. So give me some stuff to work from. Get in the chat. Let me know what's up. While we're waiting for that to happen, just want to say a shout out to my YouTube channel members, my Patreons, my super thanks donors. You guys are awesome. And of course, to my participants. If you're here, if you're getting any value from this, you're awesome. And let me know how I can help. There was also another thing that I wanted to cover today, and that was a comment that I had received on my YouTube channel on one of my videos that I did want to address here. So I'm going to try and pull that out here. I didn't actually prepare this in advance. A bit remiss of me, but let's see if we can get this happening, and we can go through this together, because I believe that what this person is dealing with is not unique to them. I think a lot of people can relate to this. Here, let's see if I can get this going. Okay, this is from Shady Nefarious. Shady says, I've been searching for a job, aka front-end developer, though I have zero experience, but know the basics, and haven't even landed a job interview, and I get a lot of rejections for nearly 2 months. I keep myself positive while I get rejection responses from emails. Sadly, in reality, a lot of them require experience, at least 2 or 3 years. And very scarce offers are for entry levels. Some people are still finding jobs even after 6 months. I haven't given up yet on to my dream job. I don't expect too much from them, but to hear that I get invited to an interview and show off what I can do for their team. I miss working for over 2 years now, and I want to get back onto my feet. Okay, I wanted to specifically address this question because I think that Shady Nefarious, if you're watching, you are not alone. I think a lot of people have very similar stories. Obviously, let me know in the chat if you can identify with this. There's a couple of things in here that I wanted to touch on. Okay, so just going back to this here, it starts off by saying, you're a front-end developer, you have zero experience, but know the basics. Okay, listen, this whole business about, how much experience you need and all this kind of stuff, what you got to remember is that certainly for some employers, when they write that in a job posting, they're serious. They literally mean that is their policy and it's non-negotiable, okay? But for a lot of others, it's something they put on the job posting. It's certainly something they consider nice to have, but it's not a deal breaker if you don't have it, okay? That will be the realities for some employers. In my experience, it's for most employers, okay? Now, this whole topic of an entry-level job that requires 2 or 3 years of experience, that has been talked about sometimes what's going on there is that, they would like, ideally, for you to have 2 to 3 years experience for the entry-level job. If the supply outstrips the demand in the job market, they'd love to be able to pick and choose. They would love you to have a PhD, but yet feel that you're only worth the compensation that you could get from this job. And so they essentially have you in an entry-level position with your PhD, making this money and staying. They would love that, right? And that's what they're shooting for. And sometimes they can get it, or something very close to it. Obviously, I'm picking a bit of an absurd example, but hopefully you get the idea, okay? So that's the first thing. So it may not be a deal breaker if you don't have the experience they say that they're looking for, okay? Now, a lot of people are probably going to suspect what I'm going to touch on next, and that is that there is a shortcut to getting almost any kind of job, pretty much any kind of job, and that is the world of networking. And you need to tune into that stuff, okay? Because that will open up so many more job possibilities, number one. And number two, you'll be able to get the job. You will jump to the top of the pile in consideration for these jobs if you do the networking thing, okay? And I think I have a video coming out soon that talks about that. I talked about that recently also. There are many different ways to get a job. Responding to posted jobs is only one of the methods, and as it turns out, it is not the best method by far. In fact, it's one of the worst. The reason why it's predominant among younger people or people that are newer to job search is because it's the default method. It's the most obvious traditional method. Where do you look for a job? In the classified ads, right? That's what it used to be. And now where do you look for a job? On the internet, on the job boards, right? That's the sort of default way. But it's actually not a great method, okay, for reasons I've gone into many times before. Now, networking will help you, okay? So especially if you are Shady Nefarious here, if you are a front-end developer. Now, here's the assumptions I'm going to make. Front-end developer, i.e. technical person, i.e. not an extrovert, i.e. not down with social skills or networking. Those are the assumptions I'm making, and they fit with what you're saying here, okay? Now imagine if you could go talk to the head of department for this company, okay, that's hiring. Imagine if you could talk to that person in person, and you're the only one that showed up, and they saw, number one, first of all, the evidence of the fact that you were talking to them showed that you were passionate about that job and or that company. Because if you weren't passionate about it, you didn't care, you wouldn't be showing up to talk to them, right? So the simple fact that you're there signals that you care about that specific role or that specific company or both, okay? Now, in hiring, just so you know, that's half the challenge of hiring, is to find a candidate who actually cares about that specific job and is not just, looking for any job that will pay them. They specifically want to do that, okay? That's half the challenge of what the people on the other side of the table have. That's what they're looking for. It's very hard to distinguish between the people that actually care about the job and the people that are just there to get any job. As long as you're paying, they put themselves forward, and then the recruiters discover that, this person doesn't really care specifically about this job. They're not a fit specifically for this. They'll just take any technical type job they can get, right? Now, regardless of your thoughts on this or my thoughts on this, recruiters regard that as bad. And they're looking for someone who cares specifically about that job. So the fact that you showed up already, you've signaled to them that that's you. And in so doing, you've distinguished yourself from all the other people that applied online, okay? The other aspect is that they're getting a free sample of what you're like, okay? What are your communication skills? How professional are you? How easy to deal with are you? Are you likable? Do you have good communication skills? Does it look like they'll be able to work with you? Do you have the right attitude? Do your opinions somewhat click with theirs? They're seeing all that firsthand. Now, think about the process here. They're then going to have to make a decision between you and the possibly 500 people who applied online, who they haven't met, who they don't know if they're professional or have good social skills or have good communication skills or are professional or care about the job or are easy to work with or have the right attitude. They don't know any of that about them, but they know it about you. So if you were in the role of the hiring manager, which one would you pick? You'd probably go with the person that you've already met. They're a known quantity. Assuming they weren't a complete turnoff, that's what you would do. And that's what happens, right? That's the advantage of just being able to go down and talk to them before you get considered for a job, right? It's not what some people, there are some people out there who have never done this that will never do it because they already have preconceived notions about what this stuff is about. They think it's a conspiracy. They think it's only available to elites. They think it's all about nepotism, favoritism, cronyism, whatever you want to call it. It's not at all. If you're the only one that showed up, that signals something. Okay? So before we even go any deeper in talking about networking, hopefully you can see where the value of the stuff is, where it gives you the edge, you know? And if you're going to go down and have a technical conversation with a technical person, hopefully that shouldn't scare you off that much. You're not talking to a recruiter or some CEO or whatever. You're talking to a person that will most likely be your boss if you do get hired, right? So they're not this unapproachable person that you should be weird around, right? And you're going to be talking about technical things. So hopefully I've managed to sell you a little on the validity of this. Now, I encourage everyone, as always, do your own research. Don't take all your advice from me. Don't take it from any one source. Go out, do your own research, learn about this stuff. It will be to your advantage. I don't care how introverted you are, how technical you are. You can kick ass at this. You're not talking to different types of people. You're talking to people like you. You're going to be talking to the person that's going to be your boss. Okay? So learn about this. I'm glad to see some people in the chat. I will be getting to the chat in a second. I just want to finish covering this stuff. What were some of the other things in here? Okay, so Shady Nefarious has been looking for 2 months. Okay? Now, that is a certain amount of time, but I wouldn't get totally depressed and give up after 2 months, if I understand this correctly. Unfortunately, some of the lag time can be longer than that. Like you mentioned, 6 months here. Yeah, that's true. It sometimes takes a bit of time to get things happening. Now, just so you know, I don't know if this is helpful, but just the reality is that all the jobs you see posted online, okay, like all the jobs you would find on Indeed or company websites, those are only 20% or so of all the jobs that are actually out there, okay? The other 80% of jobs are there. It's just that they're not posted publicly. And some people call that the hidden job market. I used to call it the hidden job market, but apparently that term has some stigma to it. The jobs aren't hidden, they're there. It's just that you discover them not by looking on the internet, you discover them by talking to people. Okay, so this is why reaching out to companies and stuff is a really useful thing you should do. If you know what to say and you know who to say it to, it can really, really open doors for you. Okay? So there you go. Now I just see here, Alexander, first of all, NC Worker is here. NC Worker says, good afternoon, everyone. And good afternoon, NC Worker. It's great to see you here. Alexander K says, but the networking is basically only for the hidden job market, right? Yeah, it's only for getting a job. Now, if you don't want a job, you may not want to do this. But if you want a job and you're looking for a job, then you would do it because you will get hired, A, so much sooner, and B, the quality of jobs in the hidden job market are much better. You see, they don't have to post those jobs publicly because every single person that they mention it to, that person will come back and say, hey, I got a brother or a friend or a cousin that might be a fit for that. Should I tell them to send you their resume? That's how desirable those jobs are, right? So why would you post the job publicly when, if you're a boss who runs a department, like a team of people or whatever, if you mention to that team, I'm hiring for another team member position, all the people on your team, or a huge proportion of them, come to you and say, hey, I got a recommendation. There's a coworker of mine that my previous job that would be great for this. Or I got a brother or a cousin or whatever, a friend, I highly recommend them. These are people that are giving personal recommendations. Let me be clear. The hiring manager is getting personal recommendations for candidates from the people that the hiring manager trusts and works with every day. That says something about the quality of those candidates that they're pushing. Because if they recommend a candidate and that candidate turns out to be horrible, that employee, that team member has just ruined their reputation with their boss over it. You know what I mean? So who would choose instead to consider a stranger they've never met, who could be a criminal, a psychopath, they could have falsified everything on their resume? Who would look at those people first instead of the people that you trust every day? Who are they recommending, right? That's the logic behind this. That's why this is a thing, okay? Now look, I'm not saying that, people everywhere always behave the same way and it always goes beautifully. You get all kinds of things happening out there, but that's the general tendency of how this stuff works. And the best jobs are in the hidden job market, right? They're the most desirable jobs out there. There's no need to post them, right? That's why they don't. Anyway, listen, don't take my word for any of this. Go out and do your own research. Go probe. Go contact companies. Go ask them questions. Go try some of this stuff. I've taught this in university. You know what I mean? I built a business doing this. So, we have some amazing tools at our disposal to be able to access those jobs. The first one is Google Maps. The other one is LinkedIn, right? Just those two alone will surface a hell of a lot of jobs that kick ass, that are in your hometown, that are near you. Anyway, Alexander K says, the issue with the networking from my experience was very low response rate and the risk to put a lot of effort in a company that does not have hidden jobs. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know what has an even lower rate of success? Applying for jobs. How many jobs do you have to apply to get an interview? Right? It's actually a lot lower ratio for networking, depending on what method you use, right? But if you're looking for something where no effort or no time of yours is ever wasted at all, following a lead that doesn't pan out, tell me, because that doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Talk to any salesperson. Like, in order to make sales, even the most successful salespeople, their response rate of their prospects and the leads that they follow, it's 10% is common, 5% is common. If you have to contact 20 people to make one sale, you don't mind, because you can contact 20 people in a day easily, and one sale can be $100,000, right? So, you know what I'm saying? Even if your return rate was 1%, it's still worth doing, because you can send out 100 template messages in one day. So that's bam, one interview with, say, a CEO, and if you're not going for CEOs, that's even more interviews per day, right? That you've lined up. So anyway, listen, I'm not going to try and sell you on this. If you're open to it, go and do your own research. I'm telling you, it's there. It's just that people don't see it because A, they don't believe it's there, and B, they don't have a clue how to go about accessing it. So I have some free stuff. For example, in the description box of this video, I have several links. There's a couple of videos I've done. One is called How Successful People Get Jobs. So if you haven't checked that out, there's a link to it in the description box. Go watch that video, and that's where I talk about that stuff. And if that gives you some ideas, great. Okay, I just want to quickly finish this up. Okay, we talked about that. Let's see. I keep myself positive while I get rejected responses. Yeah, listen, the reality of job search is that you are going to get rejected a lot, okay? Albert Einstein is going to be rejected a lot. I don't care if you're like the most amazing employee that ever walked the earth, you're still going to be rejected. This is a silly process. There's a lot of serendipity involved, and because they don't really take a good look at you when they judge you in the initial screening, they're going to make their decisions based on all kinds of weird stuff. And then on top of that, what they're looking for sometimes is just out to lunch. So it's almost like a testament to how awesome you are that you weren't selected. They're looking for someone they can exploit. They're looking for someone they can pull the wool over their eyes. You know what I mean? And that wasn't you. That does happen. So chin up, shady, nefarious. Okay. If you go about this the right way, do a proper job search campaign where you do multiple methods. Look for posted jobs, but also look in through other methods, and do it properly. Work on yourself. Make sure that your resume and your application is as good as it could possibly be. There's a lot of resources online to help you with that. I have some. There are other sources too. Practice your interviewing technique. If you do get interviews, make sure that you knock it out of the park. Give yourself the best chance. Okay? There's a lot of things you can do to work on it. And mock interviews are the bomb, okay? They will help you if you do pretend interviews with friends and family members. It's not perfect. It's not perfect by any means, but it's so much better than just rehearsing by yourself. You get someone else that is going to be able to give you some feedback if you're looking for it. They'll be able to spot things about you that you can't see in yourself that might be an issue. And they will simulate an actual interview so much better than what you could do working on your own. So that will help prepare you even better, okay? So I highly recommend get a friend or family member you find loafing around your house or your apartment or wherever you live. Just ask them if they'll give you a hand. They pretend to be the interviewer. You pretend to be the candidate because you are. And then you can give them a list of questions, or you could say, go make up the questions, go look online or whatever, or just make up your own questions. And then we'll do this like a real interview, if you don't mind. And it's practice for me. Okay, that's a really useful technique. Alexander K says, thank you, I'll keep trying. Yeah, Alexander, you are awesome, okay? You're highly employable, you got some real skills. I can tell by the way you write, a few basic things about you, You're not doing too bad. The fact that you're here, you're trying to do self-improvement, keep it up and just be open-minded and don't be too close-minded to certain things, and, just work on yourself. Get your advice from a variety of sources and corroborate things as much as you can with real-world evidence, okay? And it's just a matter of time. You're going to knock it out of the park if you keep this up. Okay, get in the chat. Let me know what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with. I see there's 15 people here. I'm here to try and help you out if I can. I just want to revisit this just to see if there was any other themes in here. Haven't given up on my dream job. I hear they get invited to interview, show off what I can do for them. I miss working for over 2 years. I want to get back on my feet. Yeah, so have you been out of work for 2 years? Shady and nefarious? That's what it seems to suggest. You've been looking for nearly 2 months, but you've been out of work for 2 years, so I'm not sure exactly what the deal is, but if it's been 2 years, first of all, I'm here to tell you that there's nothing necessarily wrong with you. That can be normal. But it could also be a sign of the way you're going about your job search campaign is just not optimal. There might be something that needs to be tweaked in there. All the way from, the jobs that you're targeting to the method you're using and to your materials like your resume or cover letter or your interview answers, okay? So I'm not sure quite what would need to be tweaked, but there's probably something in there that possibly could be done better if it's been 2 years. So, like the first thing that comes to mind when someone says, I've been looking for 2 years would be transportable skills. Maybe you're not doing as great a job as you could be on showing people that you have skills that just because you use them in one area doesn't mean that they don't apply to another area, right? That's something that I would look into, how to do that successfully. Alexander has a big heart, so yes. And I'm dead serious, Alexander. I don't like to BS people if I can possibly help it, and I'm not BSing anybody here. So yeah, get in the chat. I don't have a particular agenda here. I'm just responding to comments. So if you are running into issues with your job search campaign, get in the chat and let me know what we can maybe do to change that. Okay, special thanks to Shady Nefarious for leaving that comment. I did say as a reply that I would mention that in my live stream today, so I've done. Okay, now the only other thing I was going to talk about today that I have prepared for somewhat is the topic of this chat, which is say this and pass the interview. So let's talk about that. Okay, there's something that you can say in an interview that if you say it correctly, and presumably it's true, it's like dynamite. Okay, and that is telling the interviewer, whether they're a recruiter or a hiring manager, I want this job. Okay, now let me explain. You don't say it in an awkward, weird way. You say it you don't say it in a desperate way, like I need money, I want this job. That's not what we're talking about. You say it in an inspired way. And hopefully this reflects the reality. It's like if you regard the job as a good job, right, you would like to do that job. It's not just the money, but you'd actually like to do the job itself. It speaks to your strengths. It's something maybe you went to school for, that you're interested in. If that's the reality, then under no circumstances could I see anyone not saying this, right? This is gold to a recruiter. They are, like I said earlier, they're looking for someone who specifically wants this job. They do not want a candidate who will just go wherever they're paying. Now, I know the reality is that a lot of people do feel like that, and that's understandable. We all know it's understandable. But what the recruiter is specifically looking for, and they're hoping to find it, is a candidate that specifically wants to do this job. They have an affinity for doing this type of work. Okay? That's what they're looking for. So if you volunteer this in a job interview, you're playing right into that. Now, I did a video years ago where I talked about like an experience of mine where I actually got a job and I said this during like the final interview. And this is many years ago, so I don't remember the details, but I was flown to Toronto, Canada to have the final interview with this company. I sat down with their CEO in a restaurant. That was my interview. And I remember specifically saying this to them. And what I did was I said something along the lines of, listen, I want to tell you something and I want to make sure that you get it or you're listening. So I said, are you listening? And they said, yes. And I said, okay, I want this job. And then I backed it up and I said, like, I don't know, something to the effect of, this brings together several disparate skills and experiences that I have. I've got experiences here. I got experiences here. I got experiences here. This job brings all of those together. And I didn't think I would be able to find a position that made use of all three of those separate areas all in one role. So I'm really excited about doing this. I feel that I can really bring something to this role and that it would give me a chance to use all of my talents and all of my knowledge and abilities in one role. I'm very excited about that, So I said something of that nature, and I got the job. And I suspect that it was basically because I said that they went with me. I was also, and I know this for a fact, I was not the lead candidate. They had other people that they were considering that, for example, they had far more experience in sales and stuff that I did. I'm not a sales guy. I'm an operations guy. But I'd done some sales. I'd managed sales teams and things. But they had talked to salespeople that were genuine salespeople. And so they had an edge over people like me for that role. But they went with me. And I strongly suspect it was because of that. So this is gold if you can find the opportunity to say it in a job interview. A great place is when they ask you, what are your strengths, or why do you want to work here, or what can you bring to the role, why do you want this job, all that kind of stuff. If they ask you those questions, that's a great opportunity. But if you can work that in, it really gives you the edge. So that's what I want to share with everyone. It is kind of stupid that this works, but I understand how a lot of people think. You shouldn't have to say this. It's kind of strange that just saying this or saying certain things would give you the edge. But the reason is you're making a first impression. They don't know you. They don't know that you're awesome. You're just like a number, like a walking blank slate. They don't know who you are. So when you say stuff like that, that really frames the image that they have of you now. You're the one that's really passionate about this role, and you're into it, and you're saying all the right things. And it really carries a lot of weight. That's kind of the deal. And one last thing is that what I would say to everybody is, hopefully this creates a new awareness of what's actually going on in a job interview. You're making a first impression, and you have absolutely no objectivity of what you're doing with the first impression. You don't even realize it's happening. You can't put yourself in their shoes and see through their eyes. You absolutely can't do that about yourself. So it's concepts like this that are kind of foreign and alien to people. If you've never worked in sales, or you've never had to persuade anyone as part of your job, you might have a kind of a blind spot for this stuff. So tune into this. Okay, you're making a first impression. That's why it should be super positive, and you do a lot of high level stuff like your attitude and how likable you are. That's why those things matter disproportionately in job interviews. So tune into this. Let's go over to you. Rainman 1356 is here. What are your recommendations for someone who's re-entering the job market after a decade? Okay, here's the deal. A lot of things are the same as they were. All the basics are still the same, but a lot of the details have morphed a bit, like the tools people use for this, the things that recruiters and hiring managers are tuned into when they evaluate you are a little bit different. For example, these days, forgetting about interviews for a second, just applying for a job with, say, a resume, the expectation now is that when you apply for, say, a posted job, if you're doing that, you're going in with hundreds of other applicants for pretty much every job. Because it's so easy to apply online, and because everybody's online, the general rule is that most jobs, they have hundreds and hundreds of applicants going in. So that may not have been really the case 10 years ago. I mean, people were still applying online 10 years ago, but it wasn't quite like this. And so The other kind of major thing that's happened recently is AI, okay? Now, some of that is overhyped, but a lot of it is actually legitimate. Now, just take something like ChatGPT, for example. ChatGPT can do all kinds of extremely powerful things when it comes to your resume. For example, you can take your resume, you can, like if it's in a Word document or something like that, you can highlight all the text and you can say select and copy, and then you can paste it into the prompt of ChatGPT, or you could just attach the file in ChatGPT and say, rewrite my resume to be tailored to a job posting that has this text, and then you paste the text of the job posting. And what ChatGPT can do is it'll take the basic facts about you and the things on your resume, and it will rearrange them and rewrite them and only selectively include the stuff that the job posting said they were looking for, and include that stuff very prominently at the top, and then either remove the other stuff that the job posting said they're not looking for, like it's not mentioned, or downplay the rest. And doing stuff like that means that now you stand a chance of going up against hundreds of other applicants and actually getting selected for an interview, right? The candidates who are not doing that step, they're at a considerable disadvantage in getting that initial selection where they go through hundreds of applicants and they filter out like a handful that they want to interview. Okay, so some things have changed like that. It's not rocket science. There's only a few kind of principles here, but learn about that stuff because those are new. They didn't exist 10 years ago, and so as a result, they've changed the game a little bit. Once you get into a job interview, it's more familiar to what people did 10 years ago. It's almost exactly the same. They're doing a little more psychological, psychobabble, touchy-feely kind of stuff, but basically it's pretty much the same, at least in my experience, from what I'm seeing and hearing. But that's a good starting point, hopefully. The role of the cover letter is sort of morphed a little bit. And there's other principles too, like the rise of fake jobs. They were much less prominent 10 years ago. Now they're more of a thing. I've heard that they could be responsible for something like 30% of all the job postings you see online can be actually fake jobs where they've posted a job and they want you to send your information to them to apply for it, but it isn't a real job. They're just trying to get your information for a variety of reasons. Okay? So there's been a couple of developments like that. So no different advice for you than for anyone else. Get your advice from a variety of different sources. Go try stuff, and you'll be back in the swing of things in no time. If you've been out of the game for 10 years, it's really not the end of the world to come back in, as long as you are aware of some of these small changes. Hopefully that helps, Rain Man. Sugar Plum says, is that like a sugar plum fairy of some kind? This is the time of year where they play that, right? The dance of the sugar plum fairies, Tchaikovsky Nutcracker Suite. This is like the time of year when, that is being like on an infinite loop wherever you go. You start to have dreams, and it's playing in your dreams, and you want to go jump out of a window. Sugar Plum says, I've been out of work for over a year. I only have over a year of work experience in audit. Excuse me. How can I structure my resume and ace my interviews for finance roles since I don't have much experience? Okay. Here's some things you can do, Sugar Plum. First of all, what you're most likely going to do, because it leads to the best results, is you're not going to keep your resume the same and then apply for a ton of jobs with the same resume. Okay? You're most likely going to rewrite your resume for each job you apply to. In the past, that would have been ridiculous, because that would have been so labor intensive to do. You'd be really limited in the amount of jobs you could apply for. But these days, thanks to AI tools, things like ChatGPT, you can do that. Okay, and I just not 10 minutes ago was talking about how you would do that, how you would get ChatGPT to rewrite your resume based on a very specific job posting. You'd paste in your resume, paste in the text, say, rewrite this to conform to this, right? And it would do a new version of your resume that was tailored to bring out the things that they said in that job posting they were looking for, and it will use all the same terminology that they used in their job posting. So you're using the same lingo. And that will stand a much higher chance of passing their filters, like their ATS software, applicant tracking software, where you send in your resume and it first gets filtered by a computer, and the computer looks for like keywords and stuff and phrases, right? So if you've really used a lot of the things they said they were looking for, and you've expressed it that way, it'll pass the filters, right? Okay, so things like this, like this is all assuming you can do the job, or you know what I mean? That's the assumption underlying everything here. Okay, so your resume is going to morph, right? And you're going to use the lingo that particular employer used in their job posting, because it's maddening. And as a financial person, like an accountant or whatever you are, you know what I'm talking about. Some people say net income, some people say profit, right? Some people say profit and loss statement, other people say, income statement, or, like there's not a lot of standardization for a lot of those terms, right? And they can be maddening. So it's stupid because depending on the lingo and how they phrased it in their job posting, you might say, well, I have that, but you use a different term for it. And then their filter doesn't recognize that, right? And it concludes that you don't have the skills. You can go to a job interview and you're sitting across the table from a recruiter who doesn't know anything about accounting. And she says like, well, we're looking for someone who can do a profit and loss statement. And I don't see anything on your resume about being able to do a profit and loss statement. So how can you say you're qualified? And you're sitting there going, well, I'm a fully certified accountant, and they go, well, yeah, but it doesn't say profit and loss statement. So sorry, right? It can be maddening. So your resume is going to morph, okay? As are your interview answers, depending on who you're talking to and what they've asked you. You got to use the same lingo, and you got to speak to what they say they're looking for, not what you feel are your strengths. You got to phrase it in terms that you're giving them what they think are strengths. Does that make any sense? So that's how you would structure your resume, and it's going to morph, okay? It's not going to be one resume you use for everything. People still do that, but they do that at like upper management levels. If you're anything lower than that, your resume is going to have to adapt to conform to what people are looking for, what they say they're looking for, and how they express it. Does that make sense? Now, about the whole experience thing, like I don't have much experience. Listen, look, okay, let's get this out of the way first. There are some jobs, like senior jobs, you just need experience, end of discussion, right? But there are a lot of jobs where, just because you haven't done it for X number of years doesn't mean that you can't do it. You might actually be the best candidate. In my experience, I'd rather have someone who's relatively new and young and has a lot of energy than necessarily having a person who's been doing the same thing for 35 years, but they're really stuck in their ways and they only do it the way they were taught at their very first company, and they can't adapt or alter what they do. You know what I mean? And they're so close-minded they will not consider doing anything any other way, right? You know what I mean? It depends. And just because you don't have a ton of experience doesn't mean that you can't do something. There are some jobs where you actually you have an edge because your mind isn't closed to only doing it one way. You can still learn, and you're still open to doing things different ways, whereas older people sometimes aren't. The other thing is that sometimes the experience requirements are BS, to be honest with you. It's like recruiters, let's listen, there are some great recruiters and some of them do a fantastic job, and there's a legitimate need for people that do recruiting and they're in that role. However, one of the drawbacks to recruiters is that they don't usually understand the subject matter of the positions they're hiring for, and this can be a considerable problem, right? Especially when they're trying to look at two people. Like a recruiter might be looking at two accountants and trying to decide who's the better accountant when the recruiter themselves doesn't know anything about accounting. They don't even know the basic terms, right? And that can be a big problem, right? But how do they do it? They go, okay, years of experience is the universal metric. So they say, well, you've been an accountant for 5 years, you've been an accountant for 15 years, therefore you will be better, right? Now we all know a lot of times that's false, right? Let's admit this, okay? It's crap. Sometimes, yes, years of experience do matter, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes they actually count against you. I'd rather hire someone who's done that, but also done several other things, and they can bring all those experiences to this role, But I'm in the minority. Now, what were we talking about here? Structure, so I don't have much experience. So the other thing is that you can equalize, you can overcome weakness in any area, including lack of experience, if you do certain other things. I already talked about networking. I already talked about like showing up. Yeah, you could hire senior accountants with a lot of experience, but you know what? I'm the only one that cared enough to show up for this job, thus showing that I actually care specifically about working here. They have no affinity of working here. They'll go anywhere that pays them, but I want to work here. And that does count for something, Another thing is that if you are the most likable candidate, you go to the interview and you're the one that they click with the best. They love you. They enjoy the interview with you. They want it to go on forever because they enjoy your company. You get along great. You click, you're easy to talk to. You're easy to understand. You have the right attitude. You're professional. You don't take offense. It's just easy to deal with you. They'd much rather have that than someone who's got 10 years more experience than you, who is like gruff, aloof. They kind of take offense easily. They kind of, are difficult to deal with, a bit crusty or spiky. You can make up for that with other things. The number one thing is being likable. Okay, so keep that in mind and work on what you have. And you can get around the whole like lack of experience. And you know what? The other thing is that everyone starts off with no experience. And, that's where everybody starts. The best employees start off with no experience. And the other thing is that don't let anyone convince you have no experience. You've got a hell of a lot of experience. You've been to school, right? What did they do in school? You had to show up on time. You had to meet deadlines. You had to ask for help when you needed help. You needed to do extra work when you were falling behind and course correct. You needed to be trainable to learn new material at a relatively fast clip. You needed to be able to communicate with the instructor and understand their expectations and clarify those expectations if they were unclear to you, and so on. You have to have a good work ethic, punctuality, blah, 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 blah. What do you do on the job? Well, you do things that involve all of those, right? So if they say, well, I'm concerned you don't have much experience, you could say, well, let's talk about my work ethic. Let's talk about how I led a project. Let's talk about how I worked in groups and interacted with many different types of people successfully. Let's talk about the time that, I was falling behind or the instructions were unclear. And I, on my own initiative, went to the instructor, got them to work with me, and, had a more of a one-on-one experience. and overcame my disadvantages and got one of the best marks in the class. Let's talk about all those experiences, because that illustrates all the things I would need to do to be a kick-ass employee here. Right? So just remember that. You've got a lot of things you can talk about in the interview when they ask you about your experience, right? That's relevant. Maybe, it turns out you weren't doing accounting for some of those experiences, but it doesn't matter because it's making statements, very powerful statements about what you're like as a person and an employee, right? So all you got to do is you got to just prepare all this stuff and rehearse it right, and then you can answer any question. You'll have an answer for anything that they ask you. Have you done this? Yes. Might not be in an accounting role, but it's over here, but it's exactly the same thing, and I've done it, and I know what to do. Right? So you got everything you need. Just combine all these things together and knock it out of the park, okay? Best of luck to you, Sugar Plum. That's a great question. Enter Rain Man, who's re-entering the workforce. Get in the chat. I've reached the end of the chat. I don't have an agenda of what to talk about, so I'm just sort of going off your questions. I see there are 15 people here. Thank you for being here. If you are struggling with something or wondering about something, let me know what that is. In the meantime, if you want to go deeper and you want to get a grip on some of this stuff, I have several courses, as you can see on the screen. Check this one out. This is the most relevant to what we're talking about here. There is a link in the description box of this live stream. And I've also made another video, which is like a sort of FAQ, frequently asked questions, about the course. So it's very transparent. You know exactly what you're getting into, how it works, what it'll do for you, all that kind of stuff. The other thing that's related to it is this thing here, my Write Like a Professional course. This is probably the most simple self-contained course of the three that I have. Probably the quickest, but this is mainly for people who are going to want to tack on above average communication skills for your career. So if you are looking to get promoted into upper middle management or executive management, this is the course to take. That's the stuff that you're going to have to tack on to your technical skills and know how that works in order to be considered for those positions, because you need to be able to have that stuff in those roles. So check that out. Once again, links in the description box to these things. And once again, I've made FAQ videos about all these courses so you can see what you're getting into and how it works and decide if it's right for you. This will help you get hired sooner. It'll help you get better jobs than you might otherwise do. So if you need some help, you got these programs, and they come with templates and processes and all that kind of stuff. Alexander K says, any thoughts on what to put in a thank you note after an interview to get a job? Okay, here's the deal with thank you notes. The danger is not like, the thing about thank you notes is that it's not like a thank you note usually will make or break like you getting a job. And if you write a really eloquent thank you note, that's what convinces them to give you the job or something. It's more of like a fear of not doing it, because it's the default thing for a lot of candidates to do. After they do an interview, it's kind of the default thing to just send a thank you email or a thank you message. So if you're the only one that's not sending a thank you message, that might do you a disadvantage. So these things do not have to be elaborate. There's an advantage if they're very brief, because the recruiters usually do not have a lot of time to spare. And if you write like a big page-long thank you thing, they're not going to read it. So what to put in it would just be a very brief message, and it would be something along the lines of, thank you very much for bringing me in for an interview. It was a pleasure to meet you or all of you. I really appreciate it. And then if for a bonus, you could say one thing that you appreciated that they did and thank them for it. So like, it could be something benign. Like, when I came in, you really made me feel comfortable and offered me a coffee. You were very hospitable, something like that. So you could say, I appreciated meeting you all. I also appreciated how hospitable you were and how welcome you made me feel when I first arrived. Something like that. Thank you very much. If you should need anything, any additional information or anything else from me, please don't hesitate to let me know. And then your name and your contact information. And that's it. Just something very brief like that. That's all you need to do. Nice, simple, to the point, and that's all. And you should be sending these as a default thing for any job interview you get called down to do. Even if it's a virtual interview or a screening interview, like on the phone or something, you should still do this. Very simple, very brief, just a matter of course. Does that make sense? You don't need to do any more. And if you do more than that, I think it kind of counts against you because it just makes it long and, unwieldy. So that's what I'd say. So yeah, get in the chat. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I'm here to help. Today so far, we have covered say this and pass the interview. So if you missed that segment of this, go back. We talked about it more towards the beginning. Talking about, saying, I want this job and how powerful that is and how you say it and in what context. It's absolute magic, for a lot of hiring managers and recruiters, because it speaks directly to what they're really looking for, but it's something they can't bring up themselves. They can't say, do you want this job? Because everybody's going to say yes. That's not a good test, You have to sort of infer it from people's behavior. And if they come out and explicitly state it in a genuine way, that plays right into it. They will hire someone who's less experienced and who has less credentials than another candidate based on that person saying this and being, convincing, presumably because it's true. Right? So very powerful stuff. It is the holiday season for people certainly in North America, Europe, a lot of other parts of the world. It's not universal, but most parts of the world, they have a holiday of celebration of some kind right around the corner. Don't necessarily ramp down your job or feel you need to ramp down your job search if you don't want to. It can make sense to search for jobs at this time of year. I did a video on that years ago. A lot of people some people don't believe me on that, but it's true. I've gotten this from a lot of executive recruiters and stuff that talked about this stuff. And there are compelling reasons why you would want to look at this time of year. Things like retirements are happening this time of year. It's a logical time for those to occur. And, there's other things like, okay, the amount of jobs posted goes down like a little bit, but the amount of people looking for those jobs goes down a lot. So if you're looking at the ratio between how many people are chasing how many jobs, it actually gets better this time of year. So that's another reason why you don't necessarily have to ramp down your job search right now if you don't specifically want to. So I just want to throw that out. Okay, it doesn't look like there's much going on in the chat, so I'm probably going to end soon. There are 15 people here. Thank you for being here. Check out my courses. There's a lot of things that can really help you there, depending what your goals are. If you're looking for a job, sorry, wrong side, this side. If you're looking for a job, if you're looking to get promoted into upper management, or if you're looking to learn about business, how business works for either the purposes of entrepreneurship, starting a side hustle to create extra income, or you just want to become a business owner and all this kind of stuff, check out that course, the $100 MBA. There's links to all of these in the description box below. Check them out. I also have resources to fully explain how these courses work and what you get. So check those out. And I wish you all the best. Thanks for joining me today. You guys are awesome, and I will see you soon. Take care.